The morning air in Chicago was brisk, carrying that sharp scent of lake breeze mixed with city energy, a reminder that autumn had quietly arrived. Inside a sleek black Rolls-Royce gliding down Michigan Avenue, Stephen Butler loosened his tie, staring absently through the tinted window. His assistant's voice buzzed over the car intercom. "Sir, your appointment at Chicago General Hospital is at 10 sharp. Dr. Monroe will be handling your examination." Stephen muttered, "Fine," his gaze fixed on the skyline, tall, cold, and glittering, just like the empire he'd built. He wasn't the kind of man who liked hospitals, not because of fear, but because they reminded him that all his wealth, all his skyscrapers, couldn't buy him time. For weeks, his chest had felt tight, his breath shorter than usual. Daniel, his business partner and closest friend, had practically forced him to schedule this checkup. "You're not invincible, Steve," Daniel had said. "You can't build condos if you're 6 feet under." Now, here he was, Chicago's most elusive billionaire, walking into a hospital like any other man. The lobby smelled of antiseptic and coffee. Nurses moved briskly across the polished floor, murmuring greetings. A young nurse guided him into a consultation room and smiled politely. "Dr. Monroe will be with you shortly, Mr. Butler. Please make yourself comfortable." He nodded, settling into the chair. The room was sterile and quiet, the kind of quiet that presses against your chest. Stephen scrolled through his phone to distract himself, reading a message from Daniel. "Remember, no charm tactics. Just get checked and leave." Stephen smirked. "Charm tactics," he muttered. "As if I'd flirt with a doctor." The door clicked open behind him. He turned casually and froze. The phone slipped from his hand and landed on the tile with a soft thud. Standing in the doorway, wearing a white coat and a stunned expression, was Dr. Olivia Monroe. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The air between them thickened, like time itself had refused to move. Olivia's dark brown eyes widened, her lips parting slightly as recognition hit. 7 years had passed, but the face before her, sharp jaw, storm-gray eyes, that familiar half-smile, hadn't changed much. Maybe a few more lines of power and regret. "Stephen," she finally breathed. He rose slowly from the chair, disbelief etched across his face. "Olivia. Wow. It's really you." Her name rolled off his tongue like a memory he'd been trying not to taste. She blinked, gathering her composure, switching instantly into professionalism. "Mr. Butler," she said, her tone crisp. "I didn't realize you were the patient on my schedule today." Stephen gave a faint, awkward laugh. "Trust me, neither did I. I thought you moved out of Chicago." "I did. For a while." She set his chart on the table. "Now, if we could get started." There was a pause, thick with everything unsaid. The way he'd left without goodbye. The way she'd cried for weeks before finally burying his memory under ambition. Stephen sat back down, his heartbeat faster than it should have been. Ironically, she was here to check it. Olivia slipped on her stethoscope, her movements calm, precise, the way doctors are trained to be. But her hands trembled just slightly when she said, "Deep breath in." He obeyed. The sound of his heartbeat filled the small space, strong but uneven. She focused, listening carefully, but every beat dragged her back into memories. Nights on his penthouse balcony, his laughter echoing against the Chicago skyline, his whispered promises. She cleared her throat. "You've been under stress?" Stephen gave a humorless chuckle. "When am I not?" "You need to take it seriously," she said sharply. "Your heart's under pressure." "Ironic," he said softly. "You always said I didn't have one." Olivia's eyes flickered up. "I said that because you broke it." Silence again. Even the hum of the air conditioner seemed to fade. After a beat, she stepped back, folding her arms. "I'll order an ECG and a few blood tests. I want to make sure this isn't something serious." He nodded, his gaze lingering. "Still saving lives, huh?" "Someone has to," she replied coolly. "Unlike some people who just buy them out." Stephen smiled faintly. "Still got that fire, Olivia." "I missed that." Her expression hardened. "Don't." He exhaled, guilt flashing across his face. "I'm sorry. That was out of line." She turned toward the door. "The nurse will come for your tests." "Good day, Mr. Butler." But just before she left, Stephen said quietly, "You look amazing, by the way." She paused, shoulders stiffening, then left without another word. Back in his car, Stephen couldn't stop thinking about her. Olivia Monroe, the woman who'd once made him believe in forever. They'd met when he was still building his empire, long before the Forbes lists and corporate galas. She'd been a medical intern then, brilliant and passionate. He'd fallen hard. But ambition had its price. When a massive deal opened doors in Europe, he'd chosen power over love, leaving her with only a note. He'd told himself it was for the best, she deserved stability, not a man who lived out of jet planes. Now, staring at her name on the hospital report, he realized how hollow that excuse sounded. He took out his phone and texted his assistant. "Find a flower shop. Send 12 white roses to Dr. Olivia Monroe at Chicago General." Card. Some hearts never stop remembering. In her office, Olivia sat motionless after her last patient left. Her heart was still racing, not from the day's work but from him. She stared at the chart with his name written neatly at the top. Stephen Butler. Age 42. Chief complaint, chest tightness. 7 years, and he still had that same look, confident, magnetic, dangerous. She had built walls around her heart, brick by brick, and in one morning, he'd walked right through them. Her sister Grace knocked softly and peeked in. "You okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." Olivia forced a smile. "Maybe I did." Grace stepped inside, smirking. "That bad, huh?" Olivia sighed. Stephen Butler. He came in for a checkup. Grace's eyebrows shot up. "Wait, the Stephen? The one who ghosted you for a business deal." "The same." Olivia leaned back. "He's different. Older, maybe wiser. But seeing him, Grace, it felt like my past just walked into the room wearing a $1,000 suit." Grace grinned. "And let me guess, your heart didn't get the memo?" Olivia groaned. "Stop. I'm serious. I can't afford distractions like him. I've worked too hard to rebuild." Grace shrugged. "Maybe it's not a distraction. Maybe it's unfinished business." Olivia shook her head. "Some doors are better left closed." But as she spoke, a nurse entered holding a bouquet of white roses. "For you, Dr. Monroe," the nurse said. "From Mr. Butler." Olivia froze. Grace's jaw dropped. "Oh, he's bold." She opened the card. It read, "Some hearts never stop remembering." Her throat tightened. For a moment, she thought about throwing them away. But she didn't. She set them gently on her desk, a contradiction she couldn't explain. The next morning, as she reviewed lab results, Olivia frowned. Stephen's ECG showed irregularities, mild arrhythmia, possibly stress-related but concerning. He'd need a follow-up. She hesitated before picking up the phone, her fingers hovering over his number on the hospital record. Her heart whispered, "Don't call." Her mind said, "You're a doctor. You must." She dialed. He answered almost immediately. "Dr. Monroe," he said, his voice low and warm. "To what do I owe the honor?" She ignored the charm. "Your test results show some irregularities. I need you to come back for additional evaluation." "Does that mean I get to see you again?" She exhaled sharply. "Don't make this difficult." "I wouldn't dream of it," he said, smiling audibly. "I'll be there tomorrow morning." That evening, Chicago shimmered in twilight. Skyscrapers lit up like diamonds against the lake. Olivia stood by her window, watching the city pulse with life. She thought about him, the man who once owned her heart and shattered it, now suddenly back in her world. Fate had a cruel sense of humor. At the same time, miles away in his penthouse, Stephen looked out over the same skyline. He poured himself a glass of scotch but couldn't drink it. For the first time in years, the city felt alive, because she was somewhere in it. He whispered to himself, "Maybe this time I'll get it right." The next morning, Chicago gleamed under a pale sun. Traffic hummed along Lakeshore Drive, and inside Chicago General Hospital, Olivia Monroe sat behind her desk, her white coat neatly folded over the chair. She had tried to focus on her patients, but her thoughts kept drifting to him. She told herself she was prepared for his return appointment. She told herself she'd keep it professional. But her pulse betrayed her. A knock at the door broke her thoughts. "Dr. Monroe," a nurse said. "Your 10 o'clock is here." "Mr. Butler." Olivia took a deep breath. "Send him in." The door opened, and Stephen walked in, confident, composed, but softer this time. He wore a navy blue sweater instead of a suit, and in his hand was a paper coffee cup. "I thought you might like a cappuccino," he said, holding it out. "Still your favorite, right? No sugar, just foam." Her brows lifted. You remember that? I remember everything, he said quietly. She hesitated, then took the cup. Thank you. Let's begin. As she reviewed his ECG results, she noticed the irregular pattern. You're under significant stress, she said, glancing up. Do you rest at all? Stephen smirked faintly. Rest doesn't build skyscrapers. And stress can end you before you finish one, she replied. Stephen, you need balance. Lifestyle, diet, sleep. You can't keep running like this. Do you still worry about me? He asked, his tone half playful, half serious. Olivia gave a small, tired smile. I worry about all my patients. But you didn't worry about me when you let me go, he said softly. Her pen froze mid-note. She met his eyes, her own filled with old hurt. You left, Stephen. Not me. He sighed, rubbing his temple. You're right. I was young. Ambitious. Stupid. I thought success would fill the emptiness. But every deal, every award, it all just reminded me of what I lost. Her voice softened, almost against her will. You can't rewrite the past. Maybe not, he said, his gaze steady. But maybe I can make peace with it. A silence settled, the kind that says more than words can. Then, as if sensing she needed escape, her pager beeped. Olivia stood quickly. I have to check on a patient. The nurse will finish your paperwork. Stephen rose too. Olivia, he said, his tone sincere. Thank you for not walking away. She paused at the door, not looking back. Don't give me reasons to. 2 weeks later, the city's elite gathered under chandeliers at the Drake Hotel for the annual Children's Heart Foundation Gala. The event was lavish, silver table settings, champagne towers, and an orchestra playing soft jazz. Stephen Butler was the evening's top sponsor, his company having donated a new pediatric wing to the hospital. He arrived in a tailored black tuxedo, his expression composed, though his eyes scanned the room subtly, searching. When the MC announced, "Please welcome Dr. Olivia Monroe, our guest of honor," Stephen's heart gave a faint lurch. She stepped onto the stage in a midnight blue gown that shimmered with each step. Her hair was swept into a graceful bun, diamond studs glinting under the lights. The audience applauded, but Stephen barely heard it. He was too busy remembering the last time he'd seen her dressed like that. The night he left for Europe, the night he chose ambition over love. Olivia spoke elegantly about compassion, healing, and how every child deserves a healthy heart. Her voice carried calm strength, but her eyes, when they brushed past Stephen's, flickered, just briefly. After the speech, their paths crossed near the bar. Well, Stephen said with a smile, the city still stops when you walk into a room. Olivia chuckled softly. I doubt that. He handed her a glass of sparkling water. You spoke beautifully. You always did know how to reach people. Some things never change, she replied. Though I'd say you've changed a little. I had to, he said. The old me wouldn't have survived without you. For a moment they stood there, the orchestra playing a slow tune, the city lights spilling through the grand windows. Then Stephen held out his hand. Dance with me. Olivia hesitated. Stephen, just one dance. No promises. No past. Just this moment. She exhaled, then placed her hand in his. His touch was warm, familiar, unsettling. They moved across the floor gracefully, the world around them fading into soft music and glimmering chandeliers. For the first time in years, Olivia let herself feel, his hand at her waist, his voice murmuring old jokes, his quiet regret. When the song ended, applause erupted. Cameras flashed, reporters capturing the sight of Chicago's billionaire dancing with the city's most admired doctor. Reality snapped back. Olivia stepped back quickly. Stephen, people are watching. Let them, he said simply. I don't care who knows I still. Don't, she interrupted, eyes bright with warning. Please don't say it. She turned and walked away, leaving him standing there, the echo of the music fading behind her. Later that night, Stephen stood on the hotel balcony with Daniel Hayes, his best friend and longtime business partner. The city glittered below them. You're playing with fire, Daniel said, sipping his drink. The board's already nervous about your emotional decisions. And now you're dancing with your ex on live television. Stephen sighed. Daniel, not everything is about the board. This is personal. Daniel frowned. That woman broke you once. Or maybe you broke her, doesn't matter. But if you're serious, you need to be sure this isn't nostalgia talking. It's not nostalgia, Stephen said quietly. It's love. I just realized it too late. Then make sure she believes that, Daniel said, walking off. Because right now, she probably doesn't. Unbeknownst to them, Olivia had stepped out to the terrace just in time to hear Daniel's last words, but not Stephen's. She froze in the shadows, her heart twisting. Make sure she believes that. To her, it sounded like a scheme, a publicity act to soften his image. Her chest tightened, and before she knew it, she was already leaving the hotel. The next morning, Olivia arrived at the hospital earlier than usual, trying to bury herself in work. But when Stephen showed up unexpectedly in her office, she nearly lost her composure. "Olivia, please," he said, closing the door behind him. "Hear me out." "There's nothing to hear," she said coldly, packing her files. "You've had your fun. A dance, some headlines, a little redemption for the billionaire who walked away. Congratulations. Is that what you think this is?" he asked, his voice cracking. "A show. What else could it be?" she snapped. "I heard you, Stephen. Last night on the terrace. Make sure she believes that. You're still playing games." His face fell. "You didn't hear the whole conversation." "I heard enough." Her voice softened, but her pain was visible. "You can't walk in and rewrite everything. You left. You chose to leave." He stepped closer, desperation flickering in his eyes. "I know. And if I could undo it, I would. But Olivia, what if we were never really over?" Her eyes glistened, but she turned away. "Don't do this to me again." "Then tell me you feel nothing," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "Look me in the eye and say it." She hesitated, then forced the words out. "I feel nothing." But her trembling hands betrayed her. He swallowed hard, nodded slowly, and walked toward the door. "You always were a terrible liar." And then he was gone. Olivia stood there, motionless, her heart thudding painfully. She sank into her chair, pressing her palms to her face as silent tears fell. "I told myself I'd never fall again," she whispered. That night, rain swept across Chicago. Lightning flashed over Lake Michigan, casting long shadows across Stephen's penthouse. He sat alone in his living room, a glass of untouched whiskey in hand, staring at the skyline. Her words replayed in his mind again and again. "I feel nothing." His chest tightened suddenly, sharper this time. He gasped, clutching his shirt. The pain spread down his arm. He tried to reach for his phone, but it slipped from his grasp, clattering to the floor. The city lights blurred, his breath ragged. The world dimmed. Moments later, his security team found him collapsed beside the sofa and called 911. At Chicago General Hospital, alarms sounded as paramedics rushed through the ER doors. Male, early 40s. Chest pain, possible cardiac arrest. Olivia turned at the sound of the stretcher wheels and froze. "Patient's name?" she asked. One paramedic shouted over the chaos. "Stephen Butler." Her blood ran cold. For a split second, she couldn't move. Then instinct took over. She grabbed her gloves, her heart pounding harder than it had in years. "Prep the ore," she commanded. "Now." As the elevator doors closed, she whispered under her breath, "Don't you dare leave me again." The monitor beeped in sync with his faltering heartbeat. The story that had ended years ago was now fighting for its final rewrite, one beat at a time. The cold fluorescent lights of the Chicago General Hospital operating room hummed above as monitors beeped in uneven rhythm. Nurses moved quickly, preparing 4 lines and oxygen masks. Dr. Olivia Monroe stood at the head of the table, her hands trembling inside her gloves. She tried to steady her breathing, but her heart was a storm. The patient on the table, Stephen Butler, lay unconscious, his face pale, his chest barely rising beneath the wires and tubes. Vitals dropping, a nurse called out. "BP 80/40. "Get the defibrillator ready," Olivia said sharply. "Charge to 200. The sound of the machine powering up filled the room. Olivia's pulse matched the beeping monitor, each second heavier than the last. She stared down at him, the man who had once broken her heart, the same man she had sworn never to need again. And yet, seeing him like this, fighting for breath, shattered every wall she'd ever built. "Clear." The jolt lifted his chest. The monitor screamed flatline for a moment, then mercifully, a faint heartbeat returned. Olivia's voice cracked. "Come on, Stephen. Don't you dare leave me again." Hours later, the operating room was silent except for the rhythmic beep of the monitor. Steady, strong, alive. Olivia stood in the corner, exhausted, her surgical mask pulled down. A single tear rolled down her cheek, streaking the faint line of powder on her skin. She'd saved countless lives in her career, but this one mattered. A nurse approached softly. "He's stable, doctor." Olivia nodded, unable to speak for a moment. "Good," she whispered. "Keep him monitored overnight. I'll stay here." The next morning, sunlight filtered through the blinds of the private recovery suite. Machines hummed softly. Stephen stirred, groaning faintly as he blinked awake. The first thing he saw was Olivia, asleep in a chair beside his bed, her head resting on folded arms, strands of hair falling loosely across her face. For a moment, he thought he was dreaming. Then pain in his chest reminded him he was very much alive, because of her. "Olivia," he whispered. She stirred and looked up, her eyes heavy but alert. When she saw him awake, relief flooded her features. "You scared the life out of me," she said, her voice trembling. "Do you have any idea what you put me through?" Stephen smiled weakly. "I think I owe you another apology." "You owe me more than that," she said softly, standing and moving closer. "You almost died." "I didn't," he whispered, "because you didn't let me." Their eyes met, no tension this time, no pretense. Just two hearts stripped bare after years of pride and pain. "I heard your voice," Stephen said quietly. "While everything was going dark, I heard you tell me not to leave. And I didn't." Tears welled in her eyes. "I meant it." Days turned into weeks. Stephen remained in the hospital for recovery, under strict observation. Olivia checked on him daily, at first professionally. Then, gradually, their conversations grew personal again. They spoke of the years they'd lost, of choices made and dreams deferred. He told her about the emptiness that came with success. She told him about the loneliness of healing others while her own heart remained unhealed. One afternoon, as the sun painted the hospital room gold, Stephen looked at her and said, "You know, I've built 1,000 things in my life, towers, companies, empires. But nothing ever felt as real as this." Olivia smiled faintly. "You're still dramatic." "Maybe," he said. "But I mean it. You gave me my heartbeat back, literally and figuratively." She sat by his bed, looking out at the Chicago skyline. "You can't erase the past, Stephen." "I don't want to erase it," he said. "I just want to build something better on top of it." Her eyes softened. "Then start by taking your medicine on time." He laughed weakly. "Yes, doctor." When Stephen was finally discharged, he insisted Olivia accompany him for a short walk by the Lake Michigan boardwalk. His first time outside since the surgery. The wind was crisp, carrying the scent of rain and freedom. The city glistened behind them, skyscrapers reflecting sunlight like shards of memory. They walked in silence for a while, the sound of gulls and waves filling the space between them. Finally, Stephen spoke. "Do you remember the night I left Chicago?" Olivia nodded slowly. "I remember everything. I told myself I was leaving for a better future. I didn't realize the best part of my future was standing right there, watching me go." She swallowed, her voice soft. "You broke something in me that night." "I know," he said, turning to face her. "And I've spent every day since trying to find what could fix it. Turns out it wasn't success or money. It was you." She looked up at him, eyes glassy in the golden light. "You can't just say things like that and expect me to fall all over again." He smiled. "Then I'll say it every day until you believe me." A tear escaped her eye. She didn't wipe it away. Instead, she reached out and took his hand. "Don't make promises you can't keep." He squeezed gently. "This time, I'm keeping them all." Months passed. Stephen had changed, not just in health, but in heart. He balanced work and rest, attended charity events with sincerity, and volunteered to fund cardiac research at Olivia's hospital. Their relationship blossomed quietly. Dinners, laughter, moments stolen between shifts and meetings. The city that once witnessed their heartbreak now bore witness to their healing. One evening, Stephen invited Olivia to dinner on the rooftop of his penthouse overlooking Chicago. When she arrived, she gasped softly. The place was transformed. Candles lined the terrace, fairy lights danced across the railings, and soft jazz played from hidden speakers. The lake shimmered beyond the skyline. He greeted her in a tailored gray suit, his expression tender. You once told me that the heart remembers more than the mind ever could, he said. Tonight, I wanted to remind yours why it loved me. She smiled, shaking her head. You really planned all this? Every light, every song, he said. And one more thing. He reached into his pocket, took a deep breath, and dropped to one knee. Olivia Monroe, he said, voice steady but emotional. You saved my life twice. Once as a doctor, and once as the woman who taught me that love isn't weakness. It's purpose. So here I am, asking you to make my heart your patient forever. Will you marry me? For a moment, Olivia was speechless. Tears blurred the skyline into soft light. She knelt too, facing him. You're still the same impossible man, she whispered, smiling through tears. But this time, I'm not running. She nodded, laughing softly. Yes, Stephen. Yes. He slipped the ring onto her finger, a simple diamond, elegant and understated. Then he pulled her into an embrace as fireworks burst over Lake Michigan, painting the sky with gold and crimson. The morning of the wedding broke soft and golden over Chicago, the city skyline shimmering against a pastel sunrise. The air carried a quiet excitement, the kind that only happens once in a lifetime. At the Langham Hotel's rooftop garden, florists and decorators moved like artists at work. White lilies, Olivia's favorite, lined the aisle, intertwined with soft blush roses. Strings of fairy lights hung delicately across the trellis, and crystal chandeliers swayed lightly in the summer breeze. Inside the bridal suite, Olivia Monroe stood before a full-length mirror. Her gown, satin, sleek, and elegantly simple, hugged her frame before flowing into a soft train. A sheer veil cascaded down her shoulders, catching flecks of sunlight. Grace Monroe, her sister, adjusted the veil with trembling hands. You look like you walked out of a dream, she whispered. Olivia smiled faintly. More like I'm walking into one. Her reflection didn't just show a bride. It showed a survivor, a healer, a woman who had learned that love isn't found in perfection, but in forgiveness. Across the hotel, Stephen Butler stood by a window in his tailored black tuxedo. The city stretched endlessly before him, its skyline reflected in the glass. The same skyline where he once built an empire, only to realize it meant nothing without her. His best man, Daniel Hayes, adjusted his tie. You nervous? Stephen smiled. I've negotiated billion-dollar deals, Dan. But this feels like the only one that truly matters. Daniel chuckled. Then don't mess it up. Stephen looked out the window again, his eyes softening. I won't. Not this time. As guests took their seats beneath the open sky, a gentle melody floated from a live string quartet. The officiant stood before a floral archway overlooking Lake Michigan, its surface glittering like a mirror of heaven. Then the music shifted, a soft piano version of Can't Help Falling in Love. All heads turned. Olivia appeared at the end of the aisle, her arm looped through her father's. The crowd gasped softly, she glowed. Her eyes met Stephen's across the distance, and everything, every scar, every second they'd lost, dissolved into the air between them. As she walked, memories flooded her. Their first coffee, the night he left, the day she saved his life. Now every heartbreak had led to this aisle. When she reached him, Stephen's breath hitched. You're breathtaking, he whispered. She smiled. You don't look too bad yourself. The officiant smiled warmly. Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to witness the union of two hearts once lost, now found again. Stephen took Olivia's hands in his voice steady but thick with emotion. I once thought I could buy happiness, build it, or design it. But the truth is, happiness found me when I met you. You were my peace in chaos, my reminder that love doesn't need to be perfect to be true. You saved my heart, Olivia. Not just in that hospital, but every day since. I vow to never stop earning that gift. Tears glistened in Olivia's eyes. She inhaled, then spoke softly. You once broke me, Stephen. But love, real love, taught me that even broken things can be made beautiful again. You taught me forgiveness, patience, and hope. Today, I give you all that I am, not because I need you to complete me, but because with you I am whole. The officiant smiled. By the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride. Stephen cupped her face gently, and as their lips met, the crowd erupted into applause. Rose petals rained down like blessings. Above them, the city skyline glowed as if even the heavens approved. That evening, laughter and music filled the rooftop garden. Tables were adorned with floating candles and crystal glassware that caught the reflection of the Chicago lights. Stephen and Olivia shared their first dance to John Legend's All of Me. Their movements were slow, intimate, a conversation without words. As the song ended, Stephen whispered against her ear, "For the first time in my life, I'm exactly where I'm meant to be." Later, Daniel raised a toast. To Stephen and Olivia, proof that love can fall apart, heal, and come back stronger than ever. To second chances. Glasses clinked, laughter followed, and fireworks lit up the sky, bursting over the lake in brilliant gold and silver. Olivia leaned into Stephen's shoulder, smiling. "Fireworks on our wedding night?" she teased. He grinned. "Of course. You deserve the sky itself." 3 days later, the newlyweds stepped off a private jet onto the island of Santorini, Greece. The air was warm, scented with salt and blooming jasmine. Whitewashed villas with blue domes stretched across the cliffs, overlooking the endless Aegean Sea. Their villa sat on a quiet ridge, infinity pool, open terrace, and panoramic ocean view. Inside, rose petals spelled out, "Welcome, Mr. and Mrs. Butler." Olivia laughed. "You really went all out." Stephen took her hand. "For the woman who went all in." They spent the first day exploring the cobbled streets, laughing over gelato, taking pictures by the blue-domed churches, watching the sun melt into the sea from Oae's cliffs. At night, they dined under the stars, grilled seafood, Greek wine, and the sound of waves below. A soft breeze carried her laughter across the terrace. "Do you ever think about how far we've come?" she asked. Stephen looked at her, his expression tender. "Every day. You were the only thing I ever wanted that money couldn't buy." Olivia smiled. "Good thing you finally learned how to earn it." He laughed, then leaned across the table to kiss her. The lanterns swayed above them, and somewhere in the distance, the waves applauded quietly against the cliffs. Their last evening on the island was bathed in silver moonlight. Olivia stood by the edge of their private pool, the sea stretching endlessly behind her. Stephen walked up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "Promise me something," she whispered. "Anything. No matter what happens, no more running. No more fear." He kissed the side of her neck. "You have my word. For every tomorrow." She turned to face him, eyes glistening. "Then here's mine, no more walls. Just us." They kissed under the Greek moon, the sea whispering blessings below. And in that moment, between ocean and sky, two souls that had once fallen apart finally found home in each other. Back in Chicago, a framed photo sat on Olivia's desk at the hospital. The two of them laughing on a Santorini cliff, wind in their hair. Stephen often visited, bringing lunch or flowers just because. They had built a new rhythm, one of simplicity, gratitude, and love lived out loud. Every evening, they'd walk hand in hand along Lake Michigan, just as they had the day he left the hospital. And sometimes, when the wind was gentle, he'd whisper in her ear, "You're still my heartbeat." And she'd smile, answering softly, "Always." Love, once lost, isn't always gone. Sometimes, it's just waiting to be found in the rhythm of a second heartbeat. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please like, share, and subscribe to Boundless Echoes for more interesting stories. We really appreciate your support. Comment where you are watching from, so we can give you a shout out. See you in our next video.